Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. The ring skidded across our table and stopped at my elbow. I didn't touch it. I watched my daughter's jaw lock. I said yes, she breathed, and my heartbeat stumbled. I'm Danielle, 48, and I knew we were already late. Engaged, my wife's chair scraped sharp final. Mara didn't blink. We're announcing tonight. She pulled her phone and opened a drafted post. My stomach clenched because once posted, it never comes back. How long have you known him? I kept my voice level. Long enough, she said, eyes daring me to flinch. He's 36, she paced, ringless hand cutting air. That number hit like ice and the room shrank. Names, I held out my palm for the phone. Victor, she hid the screen to her chest. We met at a tech event and it clicked. I saw a tremor in her grip, small, important. My wife breathed in one steady inhale, then set plates aside. We need to meet him before any announcement. Dinner tonight, Mara said, too quick for comfort. That speed wasn't romance, and I felt the hook set. Message him now. I slid a notepad toward her. She typed with thumbs tight, shoulders high. 3 dots came and went, then a quick reply. 7, she read, and her gaze knocked mine. A new banner flashed on her phone, location request. Her thumb hovered, then tapped decline. Another request pulsed immediately, harder, louder. Her throat worked and I counted the beats. Does he track you? I kept my eyes soft. It's safety, she answered, almost a whisper. City's crazy, she tucked hair behind one ear. If it was safety, why did her fingers shake? She lifted the ring, rolled it between knuckles, then paused. Don't make this ugly, she said, voice thinning. We're happy I'm not a kid. That last sentence hung there, sharp as a blade. I nudged the notepad back, his last name. She wrote it with small, careful letters, Vasil. I took a picture and slid the phone back. Her eyes narrowed because she knew what I'd do next. I'll vet him, I said, and she bristled. Not because I hate him, because I love you. She looked at my wife, searching for an ally. No one moved and the clock hammered on. Another ping, share live for 8 hours. Mara exhaled hard, then hit allow with a flinch. Her cheeks flushed and she kept the screen face down. I watched control disguised as care and my jaw set. Ground rule for tonight, I said, palms open. No pressure, no signatures, no decisions. Mara laughed once, short and defensive. If you embarrass me, I walk, she warned. My wife reached for her hand and missed. Mara stepped back, ring caught in a fist. It's happening with or without you, she said. I heard what she didn't say yet and it burned. I gathered my wallet and keys, then stopped. What restaurant? She gave the name without meeting me. I repeated it out loud to mark the promise. She swallowed and something fragile shifted between us. As she left to change, another alert buzzed. I read the preview, be punctual and presentable. No heart, no smile, just a small command. My chest tightened because the tone felt familiar. I texted the name to my wife with one line. We go together, we stay calm. She replied with a single dot, agreement without flourish. We had one shot to keep Mara listening. At the door, Mara reappeared with the box. She placed the ring inside, then hesitated. Maybe I'll put it on at dessert. She said it lightly, but her eyes begged us not to ruin it. We stepped into the hall and she paused again. Her phone buzzed, where are you right now? She typed in our address, then locked the screen. I felt the first crack widen and I walked faster. He was already inside when we walked in. 2 fingers lifted from his glass like a summons. Mara quickened her step and I matched her pace. My pulse settled into a slow beat that warned trouble. Right on time, he checked her screen with a glance. Tap the check-in now, his knuckle nudged her wrist. She thumbed something fast and forced a smile. The motion looked practiced and I stored that away. Congratulations to us, he raised the glass half an inch. No big toasts, efficiency, he slid menus aside. I booked a late slot at the courthouse tomorrow. Mara blinked twice and pressed her lips together. We agree on a longer runway, I kept my tone even. He studied me as if weighing a bid. Delays breed doubt, he muttered, then brushed Mara's shoulder. She flinched small and then smoothed it over. A server approached and he waved him off. We're finalizing personal logistics. He sliced the air once. Mara pulled her hand back and tucked it away. My wife folded her napkin and waited him out. Living arrangements, he opened a scheduling app. Lease addendum tonight, utilities shift Friday, cleaner on Monday. He spun the phone toward Mara for a signature field. Her pupils widened and a hush fell over us. Too fast, I tapped the screen away from her. You can review with counsel, I kept breathing S. Low. He smiled without warmth and angled the phone back. Trust saves everyone time and money. Mara reached for water and missed the rim. He caught the glass with a sharp movement. Coordination, my love, he tapped her knuckles twice. She nodded, then stared at the table edge. An alert rattled her phone against the coaster. Proof of presence, he said, not looking up. She opened the camera and angled it toward both. I shifted away and his eyes thinned. We like validation, he leaned closer across the gap. It keeps narratives clean, his teeth flashed once. My wife's foot brushed mine under the chair. We did not break eye contact with him. Family buy-in matters, I said, steady and plain. Earned, not demanded, I let the pause stretch. He shrugged and flagged a server with 2 fingers. 2 entrees now, we're on a timeline. Mara reached for his hand and didn't get it. Tomorrow feels rushed, her throat worked hard. It's exciting, yes, but I want space. He rolled his sleeve and checked the hour. Investor breakfast at 8, he kept his gaze on me. She will be there as my partner, he nodded once. Image counts, he tapped the table twice for emphasis. I pictured the fragile draft post and swallowed my anger. Partner means equals, my wife said, measured and calm. Equals pause when one needs air, she rested her palms flat. He tilted his head as if hearing static. Emotion clouds execution, he murmured with a thin smile. The server returned and he passed the card over. Run it now, he watched the screen like a hawk. Itemized copy back please, he tapped for a digital version. Mara traced the condensation circle and avoided our eyes. So, he clasped his hands finally and faced me. You'll walk her down a hallway at City Records. 1 quick photo, no speeches, we keep drama low. He looked at Mara as if confirming inventory. Her phone buzzed again and she winced. Miss second checkpoint, he noted and lifted a brow. Go on, he angled the lens to include his jawline. She hesitated, then clicked, and I counted to 3. I nudged my water away from his reach. We need tonight to evaluate risk, I said slowly. Not emotions, patterns, I leveled my tone like a line. He smirked and tightened his fingers into a small fist. Patterns, he leaned back and stretched his neck. You raised an independent thinker, correct? He didn't wait. She chose me because I make decisions, he tapped the phone. Mara's shoulders rounded just a fraction. Show me one place she decides, I kept eye contact. He held my stare 3 beats and blinked. Mara, he said at last, announce us now. Her thumb hovered over the post button and shook. She looked to me, then to my wife. Silence pressed in until the server reappeared. Your copy, the server murmured and set the slip down. Victor snatched it and slid it into his pocket. Mara set her phone face down and exhaled. Later, she whispered, then lifted her glass. He froze for a heartbeat and adjusted his sleeve. A smile returned, thinner than before. New plan, he said, drumming a slow rhythm. Private ceremony first, announcement after breakfast. His eyes flicked to Mara's locked phone. Non-negotiable, he added, and the drumming stopped. I felt the pivot and chose not to push. He expected a fight and I gave him quiet. Silence made him reveal more and he did. Prenup draft tonight, he added casually, almost playful. Mara blinked hard and gripped the edge. What draft? Her voice scraped like dry paper. A standard template, he answered as if bored. Protects my company and your spending. My wife's chair eased back half an inch. You're moving money around without counsel, her breath stayed steady. That is not happening tonight, she squared her shoulders. He studied her like a chess position and smiled. The entrees arrived and steamed between us. He pushed one toward Mara without looking. Eat, he murmured, then turned to me. You can come tomorrow if you behave. I folded my napkin and let time crawl. He thought control meant victory, but pressure leaks. Mara watched his hands more than his face. That awareness would matter soon, and he didn't see it. The bill returned and he tapped for a tip. He checked the total twice and saved the receipt. Team meeting over, he announced and stood. Walk me outside, he added without a question. Mara rose and hesitated for a breath. I placed 2 fingers on the table and stopped her. One more condition, I said, voice low and firm. No documents tonight, or we cancel dinner right here. He weighed me, then glanced at Mara's trembling hand. Fine, he clipped and turned toward the exit. 10 minutes, then we drive, he called over his shoulder. Mara looked back at us once, and that look carried a plan. His car door popped open before we reached the curb. Front seat, he snapped his fingers once and pointed. Mara stalled mid-step and look. Ed back at us. A horn blared behind him and my pulse kicked. 2 minutes, he lifted his watch and started counting down. Pickups wait for no one, he scanned the street. Mara kept still and clenched the strap on her bag. I moved beside her and blocked his angle. 10 seconds lost already, he forced a thin grin. Priorities show in movement, he jerked his head right. My wife touched Mara's elbow and didn't let go. We need a word before you go, she said. He drifted closer and dropped his voice a notch. Private talk later, right now we execute. Mara flinched at that word and shifted her weight. I stepped forward and shortened the space between us. Unlock your focus mode, he held out his hand. Mute family alerts for tonight and tomorrow. Mara's eyes bounced to mine and then away. That helps me keep things calm, he added. Or it helps you keep us out, I answered. He smiled without humor and glanced at the time. Your reactions tell me enough, he reached for Mara's phone. She pulled it back and tucked it near her ribs. Clock is moving, he opened the rear door hard. You can debrief with them after paperwork. Mara stood on the threshold and breathed shallow. I will ride with them, she said finally. He didn't blink, he rerouted, he pivoted clean. Then 3 conditions, he raised fingers like a referee. Share agenda for the morning, no surprise visitors, no delays. Mara nodded once and I felt the trap tighten. Agenda first, he thrust his screen toward her face. Accept these invites and confirm attendance. A block of events filled the display and blinked. She hovered over accept and looked at me. Press later, I said, steady and clear. Her finger moved away and his jaw twitched. He changed pace, he softened tone, he tried charm. I want transparency, he offered a half laugh. Upload your ID images to our shared drive. Mara froze and stared at the sidewalk like it might answer. No uploads, I cut him off with a palm. Documents stay with us until a lawyer reviews. He exhaled through his nose and checked the road. You are very procedural, he murmured, not pleased. Time is gone, he clicked his tongue twice and stepped back. Status check in 1 hour on video. He held up his phone with a spinning icon. Mara's screen pinged and a link appeared. 1 hour, she repeated, then swallowed hard. We'll call from our place, her voice had a burr. He leaned in close enough to fog her lens. Smiles only, no drama, he whispered, then flicked a look at me. He turned to me with a polished nod. You will model support, he said like an order. Because optics matter in leadership, he turned away sharply. I watched his back move toward the front bumper. Mara tugged my sleeve and slipped a whisper. Please drive now before he changes his mind. We bundled into our car and shut the doors fast. In the mirror, he snapped another photo and pocketed it. Before I merged, her phone vibrated 4 times. Complete pre-check I-9, the header read in bold. Another alert followed with a countdown bar. She tightened her grip and closed the app unanswered. We pulled from the curb and he mirrored us. His car eased into our lane and stayed close. I slowed, he slowed, the dance was deliberate. My wife opened our window and lifted a hand. Back off, she called with a firm voice. He looked past us at Mara and smirked. Then he veered into the next lane and surged ahead. I knew that wasn't retreat, it was scouting. At the first light, Mara spilled it fast. If I miss the video, he will show up. Then we prepare, I said, and my chest thudded. We record, we invite a neutral witness, we hold ground. Her throat worked, she nodded twice with focus. I can loop in my mentor, she managed. Someone he respects and cannot steamroll. That was the first strategic move I'd heard from her. The light changed and we glided through. Mara's screen flashed again with fresh instructions. Turn on live tracking for safety and trust. She hovered, I saw her mouth harden into resolve. No, she breathed and shut the request. 3 dots appeared, then vanished, then reappeared. He was typing and deleting and thinking. I felt the air tighten just before the next attack. A blocked number rang with no caller name. Mara stared at it as if it might bite. She answered and held it slightly away. Confirm your wedding appointment for tomorrow, a voice droned. Cancel, I mouthed, and my wife nodded. Mara straightened her spine and cleared her throat. We are not confirming anything tonight. The line went silent, then clicked off without farewell. Her shoulders came down a notch and stayed. The phone buzzed once with a new message. Your hesitation introduces risk to our synergy. Mara laughed once, short and disbelieving, and put the phone face down. We rolled into our street with a plan forming. 1 hour to stabilize her before the video. 1 hour to unmask why. Whatever that schedule hid. I parked and felt the next round already loading. I hit record before the front door swung shut. Mara toed off her shoes and stared at the countdown. 42 minutes until the video link opened. Time felt loud and fast, and we moved. Witness, I tapped my contact list and scrolled. Mara's mentor answered on the second ring. Join our call in 30, I asked without preamble. A crisp yes came back, and my shoulders eased one notch. My wife set her laptop on the counter and nodded. Mirror his feed in archive, she murmured without flair. Mara watched the screen like it might bite. Everything saved, I promised, because we would need proof. Her phone flashed a new request and buzzed twice. Upload scans to our workspace, the banner read. Mara shook her head and locked it hard. Another ping followed with a timer daring her. Switch to airplane for 5 minutes, I suggested gently. She hovered, then toggled it with a shaky breath. Silence fell, heavy but useful for thinking. I knew he would push harder once it came back. A low knock rattled the door and froze us. The neighbor stood there with earbuds and a curious frown. You folks okay? He asked, glancing at Mara's phone. Stay for a minute, I said, just sit and watch. He pulled out his own phone and hit record. Neutral observer, he said, settling into the chair. Mara blinked, surprised by the ally. I saw gratitude flicker, then steel harden. Airplane mode off, 5 pings exploded in a row. Status, verification selfie, location handshake, compliance check. He had stacked the asks like dominoes. Mara ignored them, and the silence turned tense. Script for the call, my wife whispered, eyes on notes. 3 points only, no arguments, no emotion traps. Mara read the bullet lines twice and nodded. I watched her breathe slower, like a runner finding rhythm. The link arrived with a bouncing preview image. Go safe room, I said, and we clustered around the table. The neighbor angled his lens toward all of us. 3 seconds left and my mouth dried. Victor's face filled the screen in crisp detail. Smile, he announced without pleasantries or warmth. Mara managed a tight curve that fooled no one. He leaned closer until pixels showed pores and annoyance. Confirm tomorrow's plan, he commanded with practiced cadence. Breakfast ceremony, investor meet, announcement. He stopped for effect and scanned our background. Keep this efficient, he added like a boss. Slow down, I said, keeping tone even and clean. We have conditions for any next step. His eyes clicked to me, then narrowed a hair. Authority flows through me, he replied, and I felt heat rise. Mara lifted her hand and cut through the noise. I am pausing legal actions until independent counsel reviews. Her voice held on the word independent like an anchor. Victor blinked once, only once, then switched tactics. New context, he said, and pulled up a document. A pre-filled agreement appeared with an electronic box. Initial here to show commitment to our partnership. Mara didn't move, and my jaw set harder. My wife leaned forward and raised a single finger. Share origin, edit trail, and parties, she requested calmly. Victor chuckled without humor and waved off the ask. Templates don't need theatrics, he smirked, testing for weakness. Mara's mentor popped into the call with a chime. Good evening, she announced with authority and clarity. I will be reviewing any contract placed before Mara. Victor's smile thinned to wire and the temperature changed. Outsiders complicate trust, he murmured through clenched teeth. Trust survives daylight, the mentor answered without blinking. Send the documents to my office now. Victor's eyelids fluttered just once, new data he disliked. He tried a new flank, he moved to finances. Link your account for joint household scheduling, he proposed. Temporary view only, he added like a kindness. Mara folded her hands and let the offer die. Tomorrow's breakfast is optional now, he countered quickly. Ceremony remains on track to reduce uncertainty. The mentor lifted her palm and halted him. No ceremony without counsel and cooling off period. His gaze flicked off camera, then returned tight and bright. Someone is poisoning you against us, he hissed softly. Mara tilted her head and studied the lens. Someone loves me enough to slow down, she answered. Victor inhaled, then forced a smile that did not reach. Fine, 48 hours, but no social posts. He watched for nods and got none. His jaw clicked and the mask slipped a millimeter. The neighbor coughed, making himself visible on purpose. Victor clocked him and froze for half a beat. Who is that? He demanded, eyes sharpening to points. Witness, I said, and left it hanging like a threat. He straightened and reassembled the executive tone. We are aligned on discretion, he claimed with a nod. Send your mentor's email now, I will forward drafts. Mara rattled off the address while I captured the screen. A new alert crawled across his feed mid-sentence. Payment failed, the corner flashed before he hit it. Only a second, but enough to flag something bigger. I filed it under leverage to revisit soon. He saw our faces and realized we had noticed. Connectivity glitch, he bluffed, but the timing betrayed him. My wife's eyes flashed at me, same thought, same plan. We would audit every promise before the night ended. Final point, he declared, trying to seize ground. Mara will drop by for keys tonight. He paused for resistance and prepared to bulldoze. No, Mara answered, voice steady, eyes clear. Non-negotiable, he pressed, leaning into the camera. Access simplifies tomorrow's coordination. The mentor stepped in with surgical precision. Any handoff occurs at my office with me present. Victor assessed the numbers again and recalculated tone. I am disappointed, he murmured, feigning wounded pride. Partners support momentum, not obstacles. Mara breathed in, then out, and didn't chase his bait. He tried one last jab with a sugary tilt. Wear the ring for our update photo, he coaxed. Mara lifted the small box and kept it closed. Later, she said, and I heard a door lock inside her. Meeting adjourned, the mentor concluded, leaving no oxygen. I expect the files before midnight. She ended her feed without ceremony or fluff. Victor's mouth twitched, then he killed his video abruptly. The link went dark and the room rang. Mara sagged into the chair and rubbed her temples. The neighbor blew out a breath he had held. We got that all, he said, tapping his recording. Now we verify the crack we saw, my wife whispered. Payment failed means a hole somewhere. Mara opened her laptop and pulled up public records. Numbers don't lie if you know where to look. While she typed, her phone hummed with a fresh push. Come outside, 5 minutes, no audience. We looked at each other and froze in the same thought. He was on our street, and the next move was ours. I cracked the door and saw him on the sidewalk. Phone up, hooded glare, 5 raised fingers like a threat. Alone, he mouthed, and tilted the camera toward the street. The neighbor stepped behind me and kept his lens rolling. We talk here, I called, voice even and clear. He shook his head and pointed at his car. Mara moved beside me and tugged my sleeve once. I need closure, she whispered, and my gut tightened. We walked out as a unit and stopped short. Victor kicked a small box to my shoes. Return protocol, he said, eyes fixed on Mara. Pop it open, he added, already smiling. She flipped the lid and froze at the screen. A pre-filled form waited with her details and signature line. Confirm partnership account, he announced for his recording. The word partnership scraped the air like sand. Not signing, Mara answered, chin up and steady. He clucked his tongue and lifted his phone higher. Note her hesitation for audit records, he declared without blinking. The neighbor angled his camera higher, and Victor noticed. He pocketed his phone and tried soft hands. This is a bridge setup, he murmured with practiced calm. Temporary for tomorrow's logistics only. Mara held her ground and set the box down. My wife stepped closer and spoke like a surgeon. Send the contract to council, nothing on the curb. Victor's jaw ticked once and smoothed itself flat. He tapped the car door twice, measuring our resolve. Headlights swung around the corner and slowed behind him. A woman leaned out her window and whistled once. Victor, she called, voice tight with urgency. You missed your drop, answer your phone. He stiffened, then pasted on a smile that looked glued. Wrong building, he replied without turning his head. Her stare slid past him and landed on us. She owes me nothing, the woman snapped and drove off. Mara's shoulders rose, then settled like she found footing. You told her about me, she said, eyes hard. Victor tried to laugh and it came out dry. Vendors get anxious, he muttered and reached for her wrist. I intercepted and felt his fingers bite down. Hands off, I said, low enough to force stillness. The neighbor stepped closer and lifted his phone higher. Victor released, then smoothed his jacket like nothing happened. A tow truck turned onto our block and idled nearby. The driver checked a clipboard and glanced at Victor's plates. Registration hold, he called, already lowering the hook. Victor spun around and threw both arms wide. That's an error, he insisted, voice climbing a step. Run it again, I cleared it this morning. The driver shrugged and kept the winch humming. Metal clanked and Victor's face went pale. Mara looked at me and breathed in courage. Payment failed earlier on your screen, she said calmly. Now this, she pointed toward the toe creeping closer. Tell the truth before you ask for anything. He snapped back into charm like flipping a switch. Liquidity rhythm, he said, waving off the toe. Funds settle overnight, this is noise. The winch tightened and his car lifted an inch. My wife held up her phone and spoke crisply. We have a mentor waiting for your documents tonight. Forward them now and we keep talking. He hesitated and the pause felt like a confession. A motorcycle rolled up and cut the engine short. A courier approached with a stiff envelope and pen. Delivery for Victor Vassal, the courier announced to the group. Time-stamp service, he added, and offered the signature line. Victor didn't move, then scribbled something jagged and brief. The courier filmed the handoff and rode off fast. Mara watched his hands shake as he opened the envelope. He folded the letter before finishing and tucked it away. What was that? I asked, because the moment demanded light. Routine, he answered, but his eyes were glassy. The tow cable ratcheted up another notch behind him. Routine was bleeding out in front of us. Keys, he barked suddenly, pivoting back to control. Give me apartment access and we reset. Mara stepped backward until her shoulder touched my chest. No keys, no ceremony, no meeting, she said, every word clean. He reached for the box at her feet and froze. The neighbor's lens hovered inches from his face now. You are coercing, the neighbor stated, voice flat and firm. Victor swallowed hard, then flicked a glance at me. He dropped his tone and aimed for menace. You are costing her a future that I built. I let the words land without flinching. She builds her own, I answered, and he flared. Sirens murmured 2 streets over and grew louder. Victor clocked the sound and recalculated at once. 48 hours remain, he announced toward his phone. Then we proceed without parental interference. Proceed with what? Mara asked, step steady and sure. He opened his mouth and nothing came out. The tow truck raised his bumper clear off the asphalt. Silence rushed in and told us everything. He turned on his heel and marched to the driver. Put it down, he begged, voice finally cracking. Give me 20 minutes and a card. The driver pointed at the notice and kept working. Mara picked up the box and closed the lid tight. Return protocol accepted, she said, handing it to him. No signature, no tokens, no more access. He stared at the box like it bit him. Last chance, he whispered, leaning too close to her ear. Come with me now and fix this. Mara didn't blink and didn't move. "Fix yourself first," she answered, and he stepped back. A police cruiser rolled into view and slowed. Victor forced a grin and waved them along. They scanned the tow job, then our small crowd. The cruiser kept going, but he knew they were nearby. He tucked the envelope deeper and tried one more angle. "Delete the mentor from our process," he ordered softly. "Choose me or them." He held her stare for a count. Mara turned her phone and blocked his number on camera. The tow truck lurched forward and the car followed. Victor jogged after it, shouting about misunderstandings. His voice bounced off the houses and faded. We stood together in the road and did not chase. We locked the door and moved straight to the table. Mara pulled her laptop close and opened the inbox. A new message from him waited with one line. "Sign before midnight or we're done." The clock glared back. Another email hit before we finish. Ed reading. Subject line: demanded verification codes for account recovery. Her phone lit up with a 6-digit prompt. "Decline every request," I said, and she killed it fast. My wife called the mentor and kept it tight. "Documents received," came the reply, voice clipped and steady. 2 clauses enabled debt under her name. We stared at the screen like it hissed. Footsteps rattled the hall and paused by our door. A soft knock followed by a folded note sliding under. I unfolded it and felt my teeth grind. "Keys tonight, final chance." His handwriting twitched with pressure. The neighbor forwarded his video to my phone. "Angle shows him reaching for her wrist," he added. We saved every file to a separate drive. Evidence stacks slowly, then crushes if you let it. Maura's laptop chimed with a calendar invite surge. Dozens populated the morning in quick sequence. Each titled "Commitment Touchpoint" with 5-minute gaps. He wanted exhaustion by schedule, and we all saw it. "Power off," Maura said and shut her screen. Her hands steadied as the room went quiet. "Next move is offline," she added with grit. I believed her, which changed everything between us. A private number rang and rang without stopping. I answered on speaker and held my breath. A woman breathed fast and kept her voice low. "He used my credit last year, check your reports." "Meet us at the station," my wife urged. "Bring anything with signatures or wired agreements." "I've got screenshots in a letter," the woman said. "Make it 20 minutes, I added and grabbed the keys. We left the neighbor inside with our recording set up. He sat by the door like a quiet sentinel. "If he circles back, I'll call immediately," he promised. I nodded once and felt the street tilt forward. At the station, we filed a harassment complaint. The clerk scanned the notes without looking away. "You have enough to request a protective order," she said. "Start the credit freeze tonight," she added, pen tapping. The woman arrived with a folder clutched tight. Her eyes tracked exits before she spoke. "He crowds you until your world shrinks," she whispered. "Then he hands you a pen and smiles." She laid out invoices from a cloud storage account. Mara's name appeared on a share request from yesterday. "Decline everything tied to this drive," the woman urged. "He uses it to spend proof," she warned. An officer joined us and watched the video. He paused on the wrist grab and leaned forward. "You can request a civil standby to retrieve belongings," he said. "Zero contact, 2 officers, short window," he continued. Mara looked at me and nodded once. "I want my things tonight before he changes locks." The officer checked availability and made a call. 30 minutes to dispatch, he confirmed, and we moved fast. On the drive, Mara's phone buzzed against the console. She flipped it and let it ring out. A voicemail came through with a calm baritone. "Be smart, come alone, we fixed the mess." My wife reached across and squeezed Mara's shoulder. "You're not alone," she said, voice low and fierce. Mara stared straight ahead and kept breathing slow. I felt her gather herself like a diver. We met the patrol at the curb by his building. The officers reviewed our case number and pressed the buzzer. An older tenant opened and peered at our group. "Third floor left," he muttered, then watched our backs. The door to his unit opened before we knocked. He stood there with a polished calm that looked brittle. 10 minutes, the senior officer announced, hand on his belt. "Only personal items and no debate," he added. Victor smiled directly at Mara and stepped aside. Take what you want, he murmured with cool precision. Return what belongs to me or I itemize. The officer cleared his throat, and Victor retreated an inch. Mara moved quickly through the rooms with purpose. She gathered essentials and checked drawers for stray papers. I stood at the entrance and watched Victor's hands. He kept them folded until the mask slipped. A router blinked behind the desk with a new device connected. My wife pointed and raised her eyebrows hard. Cut the uplink, she whispered, eyes on the port. We unplugged it and the apartment went very quiet. Victor's jaw jumped and he held the smile. You just ruined an upload, he almost laughed. The officer looked at the dead router and took notes. Everything you move is logged, he warned, and Victor simmered. Mara found a small lockbox under a stack. Inside lay backup keys and a stamped card. She handed the card to the officer without comment. He read the stamp and nodded, then pocketed a copy. Time, the second officer called, and we formed up. Victor stepped into the doorway and tried one last angle. You're abandoning momentum, he purred, eyes on Mara. She walked past him without a glance, which landed like a blow. In the hall, he lowered his voice to a razor. You will miss what I make of you. He hissed. Mara paused at the stairwell and turned an inch. I'll make myself, she answered and kept moving. Back outside, the officers took brief statements. Next step is court in the morning, the senior explained. Keep lines open and avoid any private meets. We thanked them, then watched the building door close. My phone buzzed with a flood of new alerts. Credit freeze confirmations stacked like a small wall. The mentor messaged that drafts had arrived. Hidden clause tied to vendor debt, her text read. Home again, we spread everything across the table. No speeches, no summaries, only steps and deadlines. Mara opened a new file and started a timeline. This time she led and I followed her tempo. At midnight exactly, a final message lit her screen. Final deadline passed, your loss, no name, no flourish. Mara deleted it and emptied the trash twice. Her hands were steady now, and the night wasn't over. We hit the courthouse line before doors unlocked. Mara clutched the folder and kept her chin set. The woman from last night arrived with coffee and resolve. Ready, she asked, and Mara nodded without blinking. A deputy posted the docket and pointed us inside. The clerk handed forms and gestured to the benches. Mara signed each line with a steady wrist. I watched her hands for tremors and saw none. Victor swept in with a lawyer and a bright grin. He did not look at me, he scanned Mara only. His counsel whispered while arranging a neat stack. I felt the temperature drop, then steadied my breath. Case number, the bailiff called, and we rose. The judge watched us over small glasses and waited. Mara summarized tight and factual timeline first to last. She ended with the recording and the attempted document. Victor's lawyer launched into a polished defense. Misunderstandings between adults, entrepreneurial stress, no threats. He offered a printed exchange and a carefully curated screenshot. The judge lifted a palm for silence and turned to Mara. Do you have proof of coercive steps? The judge asked. Mara nodded and opened the folder to the top clip. The wrist grab filled the monitor in crisp detail. The room went still, then the judge leaned forward. Any financial entanglement attempts? The judge continued, voice even. The mentor stepped up from the back row. Clauses authorizing debt without explicit consent, she stated. She held up red-line paragraphs with metadata circled. Victor's lawyer tried to pivot fast to optics. Parents interfering in adult unions, he ventured carefully. The judge cut him off with a single look. Boundaries are not invitations to exploit, he answered. Ruling came in clear and quick. Temporary protection granted and service on file. No contact, no surveillance, no third-party outreach. Return of property supervised by officers if needed. Victor's jaw pulsed once before the smile returned. He met Mara's eyes and mouthed 3 words. The bailiff moved between them before sound formed. He backed away and adjusted his cuff with effort. Outside the courtroom, a different fight started. His lawyer approached with a conciliatory nod. Let's settle the noise and repair reputations, he offered. The mentor handed him a card, then turned her back. My phone vibrated with 2 fresh alerts. Corporate registry pings flagged his business as delinquent. A lien notice posted to their public portal overnight. I showed Mara and her eyes sharpened to points. He wanted the ceremony before this became visible, she whispered. Her voice carried zero shake and full intention. I felt something heavy shift from my chest. She was out of the fog and walking forward. We crossed the plaza and found shade near the steps. The woman who warned us pulled up another message. An HR contact had replied to her archived complaint. Willing to confirm controlling behavior on background, she read. Mara lifted her phone and composed 3 lines. Engagement ended, documents with counsel do not contact. She hovered over send like a diver on the platform. Then she tapped and exhaled like she surfaced. 2 minutes later, his reply slipped through by email. A long paragraph begging for optics and a photo. Close the loop with one smiling picture, it pleaded. Mara forwarded it to the case file without comment. The mentor beckoned us into a quiet corner. I vetted the clause origin through the document history, she said. Template sourced from an old venture with a different woman. She slid over the audit trail and the usernames attached. Mara stared at the names and read one twice. The woman from the sidewalk last night matched a tag. A shared drive alias linked them by date. Pattern established, the mentor murmured and underlined the match. My wife called the officer handling our report. Update on digital materials, she said, voice cool and direct. Metadata confirms repurposed contracts across partners. Attach it, came the ends. We're brisk and grateful. Victor paced the border of the plaza like a shark. He stayed outside the distance marker and performed calm. Every few steps he lifted his phone like a mirror. He practiced a smile and swallowed hard when it failed. An older man approached him with a folded document. Not a lawyer, skin like sun in years. Your investor, the mentor whispered, eyes narrow and alert. We watched their exchange and waited for a tell. The man pointed toward the courthouse door, then back. Victor gave a small bow that read as begging. A pen appeared and the man refused it. He walked away and left Victor blinking at cement. Mara pocketed her phone and stood taller. I want to recover everything still at his office, she said. Only with escort and inventory, the mentor added. We looped in the officer and got a time. On the drive across town, Mara drove. Her knuckles stayed white for 2 blocks, then relaxed. I was choosing him because he chose fast, she said. I want slow choices now, she finished, then focused on traffic. We arrived at the co-working entrance with the patrol. The manager met us with keys and a clipboard. Victor stood behind the glass pretending not to tremble. The officers separated us and made the rules clear. Inside his small space we found a locked drawer. The manager produced the spare and logged the opening. Mara pulled out a folder labeled with her initials. Inside lay a pre-written announcement and a checklist of posts. She scanned the page and gave it to the officer. Cross-reference with the email that begged for a photo, she said. The officer photographed each sheet and bagged the lot. Victor hovered in the hall and flicked his eyes everywhere. A laptop screen slept on the desk with a flash. My wife touched the power and the screen woke. A cloud sync window showed a history of edits. The latest entry bore Mara's name, though she never touched it. The manager whistled softly and stepped back. Impersonation, he muttered, then waved over the officer. Screenshots captured the event with the clock in frame. Victor's face flattened like he had swallowed a stone. Mara collected her notebooks and a photo of us. She tucked the photo into her jacket and didn't look back. The officer sealed the drawer again and signed the log. We walked past Victor without a glance or word. On the sidewalk, his voice floated after us like smoke. You'll regret turning away from destiny, he called out. Mara stopped and half-turned with careful control. Destiny doesn't need a password, she answered and kept walking. At home, the neighbor opened our door before we knocked. He held up his phone with a new clip cued. Victor outside earlier, filming our windows and talking to himself. We saved it, then sent it to the officer in charge. The mentor convened a final call for the afternoon. Emergency session with HR and legal tomorrow, she said. Your witness and the neighbor should join remotely. Mara agreed and penciled the hour on the chart. I brewed tea and placed the cups without ceremony. Mara ignored the drink and opened her laptop again. She wrote a short statement to friends and colleagues. No blame, no drama, only facts and a boundary. Before she posted, my phone lit with a final email. Immediate settlement conference in my office, his lawyer requested. Narrow window this evening, the note stressed in bold. The mentor read it and shook her head once. Not without discovery, she typed back with precision. Not without the previous partner's testimony. Silence followed for a full minute that felt stretched. Then a new message popped from a different address. It was the older man from the plaza. He offered a single sentence and a number. I will testify that no funds exist for promises, it read. Mara looked at me and the fight left my shoulders. She posted her statement and locked her device. No flourish, no theatrics, just a clean line drawn. We sat together while the notifications piled in waves. Support messages arrived, and then a blocked number tried again. Mara stared at the screen and did nothing. The call timed out and a voicemail landed. She opened it on speaker and braced herself. A quiet apology played, and then a threat cut through. If you share my documents, I share yours, his voice hissed. Mara smiled without joy and tapped one button. Forward to the detective handling the case with a note. Extortion attempt recorded, she wrote, and then she breathed. Evening rolled toward dark and the house stayed alert. We rotated phones to loud and kept the files ready. I walked the hallway and touched the doorframe once. We were prepared for his last swing, and it was coming. The first alert hit at dawn and yanked us upright. A login attempt from a new device hammered Mara's inbox. Then another from a city across the map. He was testing our fences and looking for a weak hinge. I called the bank before coffee and asked for fraud. They flagged 2 fresh authorizations tied to a shared alias. The analyst froze everything and patched in security. Same IP as a recent civil complaint, the analyst noted, intrigued. Mara's phone pulsed with group messages from classmates. A glossy announcement graphic had landed in several threads. Her face, his title, a date, and a tagline. She stared at it, then forwarded to the detective with one line. Impersonation continues, she wrote, and I heard steel. The detective responded fast with a meeting window. Bring the mentor and your witness, the text read. My wife looped them in, then we grabbed our files. On the ride, a rideshare driver called my number. He asked if we still needed the trip under Mara's name. Pickup address matched his office from yesterday. We told him no, and he sent a screenshot for our case. At the precinct door, the detective met us with purpose. Violations compound when patterns stack, she said, moving briskly. She reviewed the fake graphic and the bank trace. 2 statutes in play now, she added, and printed forms. The woman from last night entered with a neat folder. Date-stamped emails and 2 recorded calls, she offered. The detective skimmed, then paused on a transfer authorization. His cursor moves before her voice agrees, she observed, satisfied. A clerk processed our updates and flagged a judge. Emergency review this afternoon, he said, sliding a time. We locked it in and hustled back out. The day kept throwing rope if we grabbed it fast. Mara's mentor called while we crossed the street. HR will confirm a pattern of control during reference checks, she reported. 2 companies, 4 corroborating contacts, all off the record. Mara closed her eyes, then opened them clear. My phone buzzed with a shared calendar invite. Title read Repair Session, organizer listed his lawyer. The location field included our home address. I forwarded it to the detective and kept moving. At noon exactly, a delivery driver approached our porch. He carried a bouquet and a laminated card. For the happy couple, the card shouted in block letters. The neighbor caught the handoff on video, then refused the drop. The florist called 5 minutes later, voice apologetic and blunt. Order placed under your daughter's name with a rush, she explained. We will note the fraudulent use and save the receipt. We thanked her, then sent the info to our file. Another angle hit from a private number with clipped tone. Media inquiry, the voice announced, too smooth to be random. On record reaction to your engagement announcement. We requested the domain and got a burner site instead. Mara didn't flinch, she drafted 3 sentences and saved. False announcement, restraining order in effect, no comment beyond this. The mentor reviewed and approved the typed message. We posted it to a small group and locked comments. He pivoted again by noon +30. A wellness check request arrived at dispatch under a pseudonym. The officer called us first and verified location and mood. "We're good," I said, and he logged the false alarm as abuse. We reached the courthouse early and found our line. Victor stood at the edge with his attorney. He kept exactly within the distance marker like a game. Every few seconds he glanced at our phones and smirked. Inside, the clerk ushered us into a side room. The judge joined by video and nodded once. The detective presented the new exhibits rapidly and clean. Escalation through proxies, digital spoofing, continued attempts at control. The judge focused on the calendar invite screenshot. Home address used as leverage, he noted with a frown. He looked into the camera and kept his face unreadable. Order expanded, electronic contact barred, third-party coordination banned. Victor's lawyer tried a procedural dodge and stumbled. Confusion regarding publicity and scheduling communications, he ventured. The judge raised his eyes and cut the air. "Confusion ends now," he said and signed the addendum. Back in the hall, the detective leaned close and spoke. "He will test this within 24 hours, she warned. "Answer nothing, archive everything, call us if he appears." Mara nodded and tightened her hold on the folder. We exited into the plaza and felt a shift. Not relief, not yet, a change in footing. He paced near the curb and tried to look bored. The mentor placed herself between him and our path. His phone flashed and he lifted it to eye level. A rideshare SUV rolled up with our last name on display. The driver leaned out and called for Mara. The detective stepped forward and waved him off with her badge. The driver reversed hard and sped away rattled. Victor's jaw flexed once, then settled into counterfeit calm. He turned to leave and almost collided with the investor. That man lifted a single finger and spoke 2 words. "Funding withdrawn," the investor announced, voice cool and final. "Based on due diligence and emerging facts." He handed a printed notice to Victor's counsel. Then he walked past us and gave Mara a nod. We returned home with the weight shifting again. Mara opened her laptop and rebuilt her accounts. New passwords, separate email, fresh storage with verified keys. We watched her take back ground and felt the house breathe. A message pinged from the co-working manager mid-afternoon. "Your name removed from every system," the note confirmed. "Security notified and access cards disabled at once." He attached a photo of the new log and a timestamp. The older tenant from Victor's building called next. "2 men knocked and asked for you by name," he reported. They carried clipboards and avoided the camera. He texted us the footage and we sent it along. We ate standing up because sitting invited softness. Mara paced while listening to the detective's update. "Warrant drafted for data on the fake graphic," the detective shared. "Hosting company cooperating with preservation and trace." Evening shadowed the windows and the street went quiet. A car crawled by, paused, then turned the corner slow. The neighbor posted in our thread and watched from his porch. "Same model as before," he wrote and kept his camera steady. Mara's phone remained silent by choice, and that silence helped. Mine lit with a brand new email chain instead. An attached acceptance letter for a credit line in her name. The signature didn't match, and the date carried tomorrow's stamp. We gathered around the dining table and aligned steps. Bank fraud escalation, freeze lifted only with in-person proof. Detective CC'd to place a hold on issuances. Mentor coordinating. The HR witnesses for a statement tomorrow. A sudden knock broke our rhythm right then. 2 officers stood outside with clipboards and stern faces. "Civil standby for property handoff at his storage unit," one advised. He requested a supervisor present and a neutral location. Mara looked to us, then squared her shoulders. "I want my last items back," she answered. The detective approved by text within seconds. We grabbed jackets and followed the patrol toward the truck. At the facility, Victor waited with arms folded tight. He nodded at the sergeant and kept a mask on. "This should be simple," he announced to everyone except us. 3 boxes, a garment bag, and a tablet. We stayed behind the tape and watched the roll-up door. He fumbled with the lock, hands not quite steady. When it opened, the sergeant went in first to check. "Clear," the sergeant called, then waved us forward. Mara scanned the labels and spotted a problem. Her name on 2 boxes and a third with his alias. "Open all," she requested, and the sergeant agreed. Inside the alias box lay a stack of printed forms. The detective arrived mid-inventory with purposeful strides. She flipped through the stack and stopped at a page. A consent to release data bearing Mara's forged initials. The sergeant raised an eyebrow and turned toward Victor. He lifted both hands and tried bright innocence. "Old drafts," he chirped, too quick for comfort. The detective sealed the forms in an evidence bag. "Those do not travel with you," she said, and Victor stiffened. Mara pointed to the garment bag and unzipped it. Her conference lanyard sat inside with an embedded tag. The sergeant waved a scanner and frowned at the chirp. "Tracker," he muttered, then bagged it for tech. That word landed like a gavel in a quiet room. Victor's eyes flicked toward the exit and back. He forced a grin and shrugged as if bored. The detective held his gaze and spoke evenly. "Tracking device alongside a no-contact order," she stated. "That makes tonight very different, Mr. Vassil." Silence stretched while the sergeant radioed a supervisor. Victor's swagger leaked and the room caught it. The supervisor arrived with deliberate steps and listened. He studied the tracker, the forged consent, the timeline. He nodded once and turned to Victor with a calm face. "You are detained pending review," he said, and produced cuffs. Victor laughed once, thin and nervous, then tried smooth. "This is optics," he insisted, eyes darting left. The supervisor didn't answer and completed the restraint. The detective read the fresh charges while Victor stared at concrete. Mara watched without flinching and kept her shoulders square. She signed for her property and declined the tablet. The detective advised keeping custody until the tech team cloned it. We agreed, and the sergeant locked it in the vehicle. On the drive back, the car stayed quiet by choice. Mara broke the silence with a small, decisive phrase. "I want therapy and a new number," she said. We nodded and the plan felt simple and right. At home, we reopened the laptop and finished the checklist. Credit bureaus updated, 2-factor reset, new recovery path verified. Mentor confirmed tomorrow's HR session and the investor's affidavit. We set alarms and propped the phones by the door. Just before midnight, one last message arrived from jail. A sanitized template offered a recorded call request. Mara stared for a moment and then hit decline. She blocked the number and closed her eyes without fear. I stepped into the hallway and listened to the house. No footsteps outside, no car idling, no knocks. The neighbor texted a thumbs up from his porch. We locked up and waited for morning because storms test hinges. In the dark, I replayed the first ring on our table. Then the sidewalk standoff, the office search, the storage unit. None of it felt cinematic in the moment. It felt like work, necessary, slow, relentless work. I knew this wasn't a fairy tale finish or a movie cut. This was a line held so it would not break. Mara breathed evenly in the next room, and I listened. I stayed awake and counted quiet minutes ready for any echo.